Unipod, the podcast for all things management software.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unipod. Today, I want to introduce you to Andy Callaghan, who will take us through his journey in the management software world. So, Andy, first of all, thank you for coming today and for sharing your journey and your experience with the management software community. Can you please start just by simply introducing yourself and how you got into the management software world?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So I'm Andy Callaghan. So I'm from the UK. So I'm based in York in the north of England. Professionally, I started as a web app developer. So I got into it from the technical side. I have worked as a freelancer for lots of different companies during my working life, including lots of like software as a service companies, as well as bigger companies and smaller companies. So I got involved through my hobby, which is playing music and rehearsing in a band. My startup is Jammed, which is at jammed.apps. So it is bookings and payments for creative spaces. It started just as rehearsal studios, but now we have recording studios and podcast booths and DJ spaces and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of diversified as it's gone on, but it's primarily still aimed at music spaces and specifically creative.
That sounds really cool. And I think your background already tells us the story of where this whole thing started. So can you maybe take us into the connection between your hobby and when you realize that there is a problem here that you can solve and combine your hobby with your experience as a web app developer?
Sure, yeah. So it started in very late 2018. Sorry, so 2018 in New York. So I was with my band. We were in a rehearsal room in New York, and we were paying for the session after the session, and complaining to the studio owner that we couldn't book it online, and why, when is he going to add this in? Pretty much, we were kind of annoyed as musicians that we had to talk on a WhatsApp group, and then someone had to then email him or phone him for a space. And this obviously as a band, we were doing this at like 1 a.m, right? So there was no instant feedback on when they were available. So it was annoying to us as musicians that we couldn't book the space and we couldn't instantly just agree on a time. For instance, at 1 a.m, it's quite important to be able to, just book somewhere for that week. We're kind of disorganized as musicians, as you can maybe imagine. So musicians generally aren't the most kind of admin happy people in the world. So we tend to kind of go with it, and you've got late nights and you've got late starts. So emailing and phoning isn't necessarily the most natural interface for something like that. So yeah, so we were talking to Sam and he said there isn't one. I've tried 7 or 8 different systems. I've tried WordPress plugins, tried barbershop software, I've tried salon software, and nothing really fits.
Wow.
And yeah, so like the light bulb went off in my head as like someone that had always wanted to start something new, someone that always thought that maybe I could do it like differently or better from other companies, and maybe that this was it. So that's good, because I'm a web app developer and maybe we can do like a prototype together. So we did. So I charged him for the prototype. It wasn't a free thing. I charged him. We did that. I've still got like all my old notebooks. I was just flicking through before we were speaking just now of the first kind of mentions of the system and what it would look like and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so we went through it together. To cut a long story short, he then had to close down. There's nothing to do with me. So before the system was before the system was actually ready and operational, he, due to financial pressures, closed the studio down. In 2015, York, the city centre of York, which is where the studio was, had massive floods. There's 2 rivers that go through York, so the studio itself flooded, and they never really financially recovered from that.
Oh wow.
So
unfortunately.
yeah, so it was like an impact from that. But yeah, so that's how Jammed was started, the original idea, and for me as a founder, it was at that point where it would have been quite easy, I think, to just give up and just go, no one's going to want this, or it's going to be so much harder now to find a first customer and to get that initial feedback and to get the first people actually using your product. But I did find one in Leeds, which is a city. It's a much bigger city near New York. It's about 20 minutes by train from here, and then we developed it with them, and that was in 2019, and it kind of
Wow.
grew from that.
So I can imagine that you have better things to do in 1 in the mornings. It's funny how everything clicked together. Did you do any additional marketing research, or did you just start by building this prototype specifically for this Sam guy that you told us about?
Yeah, so I'm quite lucky in my network in York. I've got a friend who was just about to start a marketing agency at the time, and she needed first customers, and I needed some kind of cheap advice and help at that point. So we kind of helped each other out at that moment. So she did a lot of the cold calling on just surveying, rehearsal spaces, getting an initial. Just teaching me on the basics of marketing, in terms of like, you've got a customer profile, you've got your ideal customer profiles, the couple of different profiles that you're looking to aim at, and then from there, where you're advertising, where you're posting, the kind of tone you need to strike in your branding and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so she did some of that. And then we did a branding exercise with another friend who's based in Huddersfield, which is close to York, with branding the whole company, and the whole the tone of the voice was quite important, as well as the look and feel of it was for me going to be extremely important to strike the people that I needed to attract, if that makes sense. So
yeah, makes sense.
I was quite clear that it was for musicians and for studio owners who are, by and large, quite suspicious of tech companies, and especially like boring websites. All the websites that otherwise they would go to are quite colorful, and so the branding that you would see on the website is based on a reflection on things like guitar pedal boards and things like really colorful, really playful, bold, very typographically and very like design led, and very like instantly recognizable. And that was, for me, where he struck gold, essentially, was the branding. And it's worked really well. So that was the first thing that we found was, who are we talking to? How do we attract them? What do they look like? And then obviously, how do we sell to them?
Yeah, really cool website, by the way. So I think it worked. And it sounds like, firsthand experience in I call it vertical, but as being a musician is probably something that really contributed to the success. And I hear like a lot of stories of management software founders that start from the experience in the vertical itself, and then something clicks from there. So that's interesting. Also a very super specific niche or sub vertical, if you can say. So I wanted to ask you, it sounded in the beginning like Sam was your only customer. And then I wanted to understand, for how long did it last, and when did you start acquiring new customers and understand that this can be really a scalable software and do all these marketing activities that you mentioned?
Yeah, so Sam which is Melrose Yard, was the original studio, which isn't there anymore, as I said. So that was for maybe 4 months, 5 months. It wasn't a long period of time. Then he said, look, there's other studios, and he gave me a couple of email addresses, and I visited one a couple of times in Leeds, and that's Old Chapel Music Studios, and they're still a customer now. So they were the first to help me prototype it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going there after freelancing. So I had a freelance job in Leeds that was 9 to 6 p.m. And then after that, obviously the studio then is open most of the day, but actually most of their customers are in the evening. if you've never been to a rehearsal space, or if you don't play a musical instrument, maybe you wouldn't know that. But most musicians and most of the studio time is actually in the evening, where people have jobs and they're not professional. They're just like, they're hobbyists. So I'd go there in the evenings and talk to them about what they needed and how their industry worked. It's quite difficult now to kind of think back to that point, because I know a lot more about it now than I did then. But even things like just purely based on what the software needed to do, right? So what are the niche and what are the distinguishing features of the software was my question, but in a way that wasn't directly like that, So it's like, what do you actually need this, why doesn't it work? Kind of teasing out some of the more important things, the more fundamental things of the software needs to do. So they were a big help in 2019. Then that studio owner, Mark, introduced me to a kind of a loose association of studios in the UK. So there was one in Peterborough, which is in the north, but kind of between London and York, and then one in London. And all three then became the first customers, all non-paying first customers, but they were then trialing it out and telling me kind of direct feedback on, this works, this doesn't work, what does this do, we're not sure, you need to explain this a bit more. We were then honing and kind of making sure that the pricing of the studio to their customers was correct. So obviously the pricing that I'm charging them is separate, but they're having to offer their studio to the customers, so making sure that was obvious to their customers on how much it would be, and making sure that the room images were big, for instance. So a lot of the generic software that you can get for booking spaces, you can't see the images, or they're so small that you can't see what equipment's in there, you can't see how big the room is, for instance.
Nice. Okay.
So even tiny things like that, right? It's like the room is their pride and joy. So some might only have 2 spaces, but those spaces are £200 an hour, right? So they've got extremely expensive equipment in there. They've got extremely knowledgeable people that are there that you can ask. So it's kind of encapsulating that into an experience that the customer then appreciates. So yeah, so that was the original kind of 3. And then obviously in 2020, everyone knows what happened in 2020. So all of my customers shut down. None of them could make money.
Oh, wow.
They were getting mixed signals from the UK government, specifically because all of my customers at this point were in the UK, where the official guidelines were that only professional musicians were allowed to practice. So, but how do you define a professional musician? It's up to interpretation. It was at a point where basically the government were stretched and they just gave a guideline, right? So they kind of had to make it up themselves and bring in all the things that became part of the COVID policy. At that time, I started advertising on Google. That Jammed was, I had a brand, I had a name, I had a logo, I had the website. At that point, I was still freelancing. At that point, I was freelancing for a women's fashion company in London. So it's like to give you a bit of an idea of the experience I've had is different. And someone clicked on my ad and became my first paying customer in New Zealand during that time.
Wow,
So,
and you did everything. You did all the paid ads and ran the campaigns and everything.
Yeah. So the paid ads I'd actually had experience with from working for my dad. So my dad was an entrepreneur as well. I kind of following in his footsteps. But when I think I was 15. I'm just trying to think back how long ago it was. I was 15 and I did the Google Ads certification. And if anyone's done that, they'll know the process. But at the time it was an exam that you could pass or fail, and I passed it, and then I ran his Google Ads, so I knew a bit about that, and yeah, so I was able to set that up fairly easily. But yeah, got the attention of a New Zealand studio that then, because they were paying me, the relationship is different. And I'm sure you've had this before, where you've got like free people will give you feedback in one way, but then when people are starting to actually pay you, they give feedback in a more direct more direct. So we arranged like weekly morning meetings, because the time zone difference is obviously so stark in the UK to New Zealand. 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, my side, 8 p.m. in their side, and we just made it work. And we made this thing, and we had a Trello board between us, and we organized it, and they're still a customer now. So all of these things are amazing. And thinking back, like, there was no alternative, right? So if you want to make something like this work, you have to put in the hours, you have to be flexible in terms of that kind of stuff. Obviously, we were benefiting from the fact that we're both English speaking, right? But I had no idea about the New Zealand rehearsal room market. I had no idea, other than Christchurch, and everyone's heard of Christchurch. I had no idea where they were or who they were. So yeah, so that's it. So I'll try and find it. But they sent me a Christmas card last year. So it's like these things. So yeah, I'll try and find. Here you go. This sticker was from a Christmas card that they sent me. So it's more than just customers. I tried at the beginning, at least, I was trying to know everyone on a first name basis.
Oh, wow.
And try to be a niche in that way. I kind of figured that no other software company would do that, right? So the generic companies wouldn't try to remember your name and wouldn't be there and wouldn't be replying to email and all that kind of stuff. So that was part of the niche as well.
Wow. First of all, it's super impressive. You sound like a real one-man show, doing all the technical stuff and music and marketing and customer success. So, so you're still managing to do everything by yourself almost, like, with agencies and support and help, but
yeah, I manage it all myself. I have a couple of freelancers that help, as and when. I've got now a developer that helps me, and he's based in India. But because I'm technically based, I can manage and project manage that and code review it in a way that some people that aren't wouldn't be able to do. I think that's maybe a piece of advice I do give to a lot of other technical founders is to give other people access and to share that a little bit, because you're actually in a really good position to be able to delegate away some of that responsibility.
yeah. And sometimes it's difficult because if you like to do something and you know how to do something, then it's tempting to already do it. But yeah, I can see your point.
Yeah, it took me a while. I'm almost talking to myself when I say that.
Nice.
Because it took me a while to get to that, and no one else is going to have the same passion for your business as you. So you're the natural salesperson, you're the natural support, you're the natural business development person of the company. The tech can be something that you can describe and you can commodify in that way that you can't in other ways. You can't commodify the support in the same way, because people will instantly just ask for me, right? They'll instantly ask for someone higher up. So I may as well just do that myself.
Yep. I'm curious, you mentioned that you have like notebooks of all the first conversation. Do you also have them next to you? Maybe you can show us the prototype or the...
Yeah, I've got all the notebooks here. So I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to the kind of notebook. So some people get like, it has to be this kind of style of line and it has to be like this color of line and all this stuff. But mine are just like, they're plain sheets. So because my writing is so massive. I'll try and find a prototype. Yeah. So for mostly it's just task management, but I do have like the original. Let me just try and find it. I've got like sketches of interfaces. Depends how long you want to wait.
Take your time.
Here we go. Yeah. So this is like this is one, and I've used like. Can you see that? It's got like Paul McCartney in room 1.
Wow.
So like this was me chatting to the studio in Leeds, and I would go and meet him in Leeds in an Indian restaurant. So it's like Indian street food restaurant that's like one of my favorite places, and we'd talk about just generally their studio and the approach that they needed to take to their customers. A big one being, as I said, like in the evening slots are where they make a lot of their money. If they just allowed someone to book in a slot from say 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. online, that would block out the rest of the evening, if I'm making sense. So they force people to take 3-hour slots, like 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. till midnight in the UK.
Yeah, okay, because no one will come only for 1 hour late in the evening. It's like the golden hours.
Exactly. So a lot of people just want an hour. So I'm a drummer. If I come, I maybe have 2 hours maximum, because if I'm drumming by myself as a solo practice, I have headphones on, I drum for an hour and a half, and then I'm done. I can't do any more than an hour and a half. You know, you see people drumming for 3 hours concerts, but these people are like much fitter than me. You have to train for that kind of level.
It's physical,
of fitness.
right?
Yeah, very physical. And they will have a break. The drummer will, because the drummer needs a break in the middle of that, and they'll have food or they'll have something to eat. And
wow, for sure.
so yeah, so if I wanted to book, just if I was being selfish, I would want to book a 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. slot. But that for the studio, takes out all the other times that you would otherwise be able to sell. And the drum kit is the one thing that you generally don't move, as well as the bass amp from the room. So you want to be able to sell the room for the most amount of money, obviously. So like in London, the studios that I've got, they were kind of one of the first ones to tell me this, and they wanted the slots in the daytime to be one thing and in the evening to be another. So that dictated how I designed Jammed, as well as having bookable extras. So what I call add-ons now, but things like breakable equipment hire, as well as microphone hire, stands, that kind of thing. So the generic software didn't allow that. So you couldn't say, I want to book that time in this room, but I also want to book these amps and guitar strings and have a price for all of that at the end. So that's like the major difference at the beginning. You know, there's other differentiating factors now, but at the beginning that was their key.
Yeah, it really explains like why a salon software, or what did you also mention here?
Like barbershops.
Barbershop software, why they didn't work for Sam, and why every specific vertical or industry really needs its own unique management software. But yeah, it still quite amazes me how specific things can go, and how when you really know your customers, you drill down into the specific features that every vertical needs. I was curious. So you said that there was no solution for music studios when you started. Was it true also globally? Were there any global solutions that could fit for him, or not even that?
There have been a lot of attempts, and still are, to make like an Airbnb for studios. So where you have an online portal, you are in a directory of all of the studios, but you give up 10% of the revenue from each booking to the platform. So those existed, and it's quite an easy. I'm not saying it's lazy, but it's something that's been tried over and over again. So in terms of management software, they were doing the bare minimum in terms of the studio operational side. They were just more of the customer acquisition for the studio. So
got it.
So lots of those existed. There were like space rental, and still are space rental kind of event-based software that Google Calendar can do, right? So I had to be better in terms of that, because obviously Google Calendar is free for most people, so you can manage and things like Calendly. But again, like a lot of these generic software, they have limitations that you only find out once you've put in 2 hours of your time. At least. So it's quite frustrating. Or you find they say, oh, it's only $20 a month. And then you get to the end. And then if you want to integrate a payment system, then the payment system is an additional $40 a month, as well as fees. You've got then sunk costs, but then you've got bad faith at that point, because you've not been clear that that's the case. These, at least in terms of, it's like a dark pattern that I've seen a lot of other companies do. Just be upfront. I've been clear right from the beginning in terms of my pricing. Like, the pricing is based on the online bookable spaces. So that was a decision I made right at the beginning, and I just copied a competitor pretty much. But the but that's kept. There's no way of doing it correctly. Pricing, there's no formula that you can apply to every single situation that will work, so you just have to kind of make a guess, and it was a guess that I've stuck with. So yeah, so there's I've got a customer in London, as I say, that I started with. They have 5 rehearsal spaces and 2 recording spaces. So the 2 recording spaces at the beginning weren't on Jammed, but they weren't online bookable on Jammed by customers, but they were managed through Jammed still. So they could still assign a customer, they could still send emails, they could still send invoice, they could still manage the payments, but it wasn't online bookable, so we wouldn't charge for that. And that still is a very popular decision that I've made, because you can say, well, the value here is in the online payments. It's in taking payments up front for bookings that are going to take place in the future. If you're just managing things through Jammed, that I don't like advertise it as freemium, but essentially it's freemium. So you can have 10 rooms and 1 being online bookable, and you would only pay for 1 subscription.
So you only pay for online bookable studios that you can really earn money from, and the rest of the features are free because you also give value, with calendar, the booking, with the operations.
Yeah, so I didn't know it at the time, but having now read more about SaaS and having read more books on the platform and on the platforms and things that other people talk about, what I'm doing is generating negative churn. Pretty much, I'm saying just list all of your spaces. You can offer your 2 most popular spaces on the platform. You only ever pay for those, but then that's a sign up. I'm getting them through the door. I'm showing them this is what it can do. They see more people booking that space, so then they add their other spaces on incrementally. So they don't have this one, bam, I have to pay $100 a month, or I have to pay £100 per month right away. They can just pay $20 a month, start on that, and then upgrade as it goes. So I have negative MRR. I'll try it again. My churn is negative because I have more people that upgrade than churn.
Okay.
Nice. Which is great. So I didn't necessarily know that was going to happen at the beginning. I was just adding this in as a fair thing to be able to do, because I was saying, look, actually that the benefit of the platform is in the online bookable spaces, but then putting my other hat on, my business development hat on, is actually that I can offer it at a cheaper price, but then I can incrementally offer them more and more of Jammed as they grow. That's worked out really well. Yeah, so I've got spaces I've got 1 space in Leeds that has literally built more rooms because they are able to automate their studio through Jammed.
Wow. That's a nice case study.
It is, yeah. So I've got that case study, and then exactly the same thing in New York. So I did a trade visit last year as part of a centenary celebration between New York and York. We have civic ties between the 2 cities, as you'd imagine. And I visited 3 of my customers in Manhattan. Well, it was 1 in Manhattan and 2 outside, just in New York City. And the one in Manhattan has 22 bookable spaces, so they pay 22 times the subscription rate, but take rooms on and off as they need, because they're not necessarily booking them all out at the same time, but they can put them on and off as people book them out, or rent them for more long-term, medium-term, and they then expanded into a room, like a floor above the original floor, so they have now 2 floors of a skyscraper.
Wow.
So yeah, so they're able to, it's able to be flexible in a way that I hadn't anticipated at the beginning. I was just seeing this as like, hey, this is a fair thing to be able to do, because actually if I'm not handling the payments, then this is a lot less risky for me in terms of the setup of the software. That obviously, as you say, they still get benefits, but actually the benefits are similar to an Excel spreadsheet at that point, that they're able to organize and they're able to schedule. The real benefit comes from the automated payments, the reminders, the receipts, the PDFs of the payments and that kind of stuff. So So yeah, so that's definitely what I would do again, but it was completely by accident.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Super on point. I think it's important to highlight it just because people are getting tired from all these subscription based platforms. And I think when you are able to tie the value that you're getting from the software, and obviously, if your customers are growing their business, then the value is tied to their growth. So they can really, at some point, enjoy paying, like if it's a possible thing to do, but when you really understand the value, I feel like I'm happy to pay for something because I know how much I'm gonna get out of it. So I think this first instinct or fair instinct that you had is really on point and relevant, and I'd like to highlight it here. So you mentioned that you started from the UK, but now you have like studios all over the world. So how did the expansion happen? Was it straight from the paid ad when you started the paid ads? And like, is it in all countries or only English speaking countries? What was the strategy?
It's mostly English speaking. I only run ads in English, but we're in 16 countries, last count. So including like Hong Kong and things like where English would be a second language potentially, as well as like Finland, again, where you've got a strong education system where actually English is taught to all kids, like in Israel, I imagine as well. It's seen as like an international
I
language.
wouldn't compare the education in Finland to the education in Israel, but okay, I'm happy to take that.
Yeah, so it's just for me, it's like I try not to become complacent. I'm in a really lucky position that English is an international, well, it was the international business language essentially, at least for now. It is. Yeah, so I only advertise in English. Is just Google ads at the beginning that got to maybe 8 countries. I then invested slightly more in Meta. I've never advertised on Twitter or X, but yeah, Meta ads have actually done over the last year or so have done a lot better than Google. Yeah, and I've kind of experimented with Reddit as well, but most of it has been Google. For that time, I think a lot of, because of the customer profile, how they are searching for these things is all through Google. It has been up till now, at least. When ChatGPT will start to offer inevitably ads for search terms, I'll be on that because I think that's how a lot of people are now searching for these things. I've seen referrals from ChatGPT to the website, and people have said that's how they found me, but I haven't been able to find how to ask it to. I would love to be able to know how to do that. So I know there are like agencies and software solutions that promise that, but they're really expensive and I don't have the money to invest in it. But yeah, so the growth up till now has been paid ads. I've kept the revenue matched, like the profit has been basically nil over the last 3 or 4 years, just matched to the amount of marketing activity to just basically spend as much as I'm getting in. And that's where the growth has come from, because I've been able to reinvest everything in paid ads, which has now got to the point where I can take a wage from Jammed. I'm able to work on it full time. I'm also able to keep growing the ads.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That was the milestone that I've been kind of waiting for, and yeah, the growth has been great. One measure has been quite slow compared to other kind of online platforms, but it's been steady. So the growth has been based on very few people leaving. The only churn I get is pretty much studios shutting down, which happens it's more often than I'd like for obvious reasons, but I've only ever had, not in my control. I've only ever had one studio, which was based in the UK. They even did like an interview with me, but they churned and went to like a WordPress plugin that they got someone to make for them. And that was the only one that I've had that's been a paying customer for more than 2 months that has then left for someone else. So the platform itself is quite sticky and it's well regarded and works well for the studios. So all of that stuff is I'm like delighted about, the fact that I can not rely on it is the wrong word, but I can kind of project forward based on the fact that my churn is quite low. Yeah, as I say, that I've got actually negative net MRR churn now, so that's fantastic. The fact that I can do that. I'm not saying that that's anything that I've decided to do. It's just potentially an accident.
Yeah, no, but I think it is something to celebrate. And in a founder's journey, you have these milestones, and that's definitely exciting when you start to become profitable and really see the results of the hard work that you put in that baby for years. So
yeah,
that's interesting. And congratulations again.
thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of management software founders stay local, at least at the beginning. So I'm wondering, like, how many studios or music studios or how many of your ICP are in London? And was the expansion crucial, or could you still stay local with your management software?
Yeah, so if I'm just taking, so where I currently live in York, so Yorkshire is like the wider region. I have in York itself, I've only just got one customer. If we're looking at within a 50-mile radius, I maybe have 5. So it's not a huge number. London, it wouldn't surprise people to know that there's a lot more studios in London and a lot more activity goes on because it's the capital and it's a cultural capital. I have maybe 20, 25. Growth has started to work in terms of word of mouth from the staff that work in these studios, because the work isn't temporary, but people in London move around for reasons. Rent is expensive, so you might start in one and then move to another studio. And I've had this multiple times now where engineers would recommend Jammed to the new place that doesn't have online bookings and is asking for it because they've used it and you've used it for multiple months or years at this point. So that's fantastic. So yeah, but I don't rely on that. I'm keen to expand into the US and into markets that I'm not in at all, which is the next kind of steps for me. So the US, purely because it's a huge market for music. It wouldn't surprise people to hear, but it's concentrated into cities. So the rehearsal model, you have to be physically close to the studio, as do all of the other members of the bands. So in the US, you'd generally get someone with a room in their house that you'd go around, and it's obviously then free to practice. In the UK, you can't do that as readily because, we all live so much closer together. And
the noise,
making noise is a problem. If you're in a city, or if you're in a town, or you're in a suburb, right? If you make noise, you will get complaints and you will annoy your neighbors and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in the US, your next neighbor might be a while away, or you're going to be completely detached from the house next to you. So places like France, Germany, Finland, Australia, and obviously like New York and California, where you're a lot closer together, urban centers, that's where you see a lot of rehearsal spaces, and that's where I see a lot of the growth coming from. But specifically, I've had a few requests from the parts of the world that aren't serviced essentially by Stripe. So you get like Argentina, Brazil, Nigeria, Kenya. Malaysia is now, I think, but it wasn't at the beginning. But there are a lot of countries where they have some provision for online payments, but they're not serviced by Stripe because I guess they're seen as too risky, or they're seen as the regulatory kind of it's not worth it for them to be in those markets. So that's another thing that I'm looking at potentially is to offer another payments gateway into those markets, so I can then be that niche as well. So I can offer a payments system for studios that I can't offer anything to at the moment. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of, and other things as well. But specifically on payments, that's a big issue that they have. That is for me is a solvable problem, but it will take me months to add.
Yeah, interesting, and also sounds a bit complicated. But I'm sure you'll figure it out. Okay, Andy, so I can't believe it, but it's almost time for us to to finish this episode, it was super, super interesting. I want to ask you one last, let's call it inspirational question. So, to all the management software founders here that are listening now and they're in the beginning of their journey or in the middle of their journey, and you could, share with them one advice or share a trend that you see in the market that they should be aware of, or if there's something that was a blind spot for you and you're happy that you noticed, then is there anything that you would like to say to them?
Yeah, I think you have to remember that you're building this for people. You're building this for someone that has a problem and that has specific pain. You're building it for someone that just wants to be on Instagram and looking at reels or doing whatever they want to do. They don't want to be on software, right? So they build it for you. You have to build it in a technical way, but you're building it to aid someone's day-to-day life. And if you can do that in a way that makes you money, then amazing. The second step is to then let them tell you and let them tell other people. So I think use cases and case studies, case studies being the most important thing that's on my website of successful customers that have had a business problem and then have paid me money and then have solved the problem. So at the beginning, you'll have a problem where you don't have anyone. So as I said at the beginning, like you have to find a first customer that you're just able to talk to and solve some of these problems. They become your first use case. And then ultimately it's building out the trust in your software. So there is a big difference that I didn't realize at the beginning. I was guilty of saying, I need to sell this. I'm trying to sell. Selling is very different to marketing. Selling is picking up the phone and talking until they either say yes or they put the phone down. Cold calling, that kind of thing, cold emailing. It has its place to get you off the mark. But marketing is building your brand, positioning yourself in a market that will have something that's similar to you. It's when they're looking for the system, they've already heard of you. So they've already seen you at a trade show, someone they know or has already talked about you. That's going to be like 80% of where you're going to get your sales. It's not going to be online. It's not going to be people looking at you on your website. Most of it's going to be social media. Most of it's going to be word of mouth. You're going to have to do all of it. It's a lot of work. No one said it's easy, but it's like my job is like every day is different. I'm super happy I chose to do this. It's like if you like a stress-free life and you like to close your laptop at the end of the day, do not start like a SaaS product. But as I say,
it looks easy, right?
It looks easy. I was guilty of it. It's just like, I just do this and people will come and people will pay me money and I'll do it. But it's like, no, it's a hell of a lot of work. But it's every day is interesting. Every day is different. I talk to so many interesting people. I go to so many different studios. I geek out with people. I talk to people for like an hour about their music collection rather than actually, I've got this thing I need to sell you. I truly love the sector, but it was difficult at the beginning. I'm a solo entrepreneur. It's so hard to keep going. It's so hard when there's no one else to be able to bounce ideas off. There's no one to delegate. I don't like the marketing side. Can you just do the social media posts? It's like, no, that's really hard to change your hats and to be a programmer and then to be a designer, then to be a social media manager, then to be a support agent. It's hard. It's really hard. But yeah, don't give up. Yeah, I think before I'm rambling too much, I think a lot of people ignore like the mental health aspects of it. So
that's important.
Yeah, so the fact that, as I say, I touched on it, like if you like a stress-free life, it's not really a flippant thing to say. It is a really hard job. And I kind of missed that at the same time as not missing it. So I kind of missed when I was freelancing and I could just on a Friday close my laptop and not look at emails over the weekend. Not look at emails when I first wake up, not have pager duty telling me that my servers are fine and email and waking me up if the servers go down, which it's not happened, but I have all this stuff set up and it stresses me out. If I'm on a long haul flight and I'm away, I have to have the internet to make sure that I can see if something goes wrong. It's all on me. So yeah, like reflect on that. Don't necessarily don't do it because of that, but just be ready for those things to happen.
Yep. Super, super important. So be ready. And thank you, Andy, so much. It was an insightful episode with a lot of information. It was super interesting. It's funny, I do this a lot lately, and still with every founder and every management software journey is so different and unique. So thank you for sharing your experience. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I'll see you next time.
See you later.